How's it going, everybody? My name's Ryan. Abby's not here today, and we have got some breaking news for you guys. Don Granato has been relieved of his head coaching duties by the Buffalo Sabres. Don Granato has been fired. And today, guys, we're jumping in with an emergency podcast because I just can't wait. We got to talk about this one. We've got a season recap episode planned for tomorrow. Abby will be back with me on that one. But guys, wanted to bring you just Sabres perspective on it. I'm hoping to get some outside perspective on the firing and potential candidates, and really kind of an outside perspective on what went wrong. But today, guys, we're going to talk about exactly what went wrong. In my opinion, we'll break out some of the reasons for his firing, why it happened now, some of the good things of his tenure too, right? We can't sit here and pretend that, oh, Don Granato's hiring was just a complete failure from start to finish and it's finally done. Like, how could this has been on the wall for like 3 years? No, this has not been one of those things that has been brewing for more than really, I'd say, this year, right? Last season, there was a lot to be excited about, a lot of hope and optimism. With finishing 1 point out of the playoffs, the team was electric. They finished third in goals, and it was just a really fun team to watch. And you know, those of you that hate analytics probably were fighting with the analytics community quite a bit, because last year a lot of people that were looking at the underlying numbers were not so glowy about the Sabres. I mean, obviously their breakout performances were awesome, and we love it. Let's dive into the tenure of Granato, not Kruger. He did help us out of the Kruger era, which we will touch on in a little bit. But for now, let's talk about Don Granato and his record as Buffalo Sabres head coach. He had a record of 122, 125, and 27, which is good for a points percentage of .495. That is the best since Lindy Ruff was let go. That is brutal, considering that sub 500 is the best coaching record a coach has had here in Buffalo. I believe this is the 7th coach fired since Pegula took over in 2011. I mean, with the rate at which coaches do get churned through in the NHL, that's not necessarily the worst thing, considering half those years were the tank years. But man, the Pegula era is not filled with lovable coaches and tremendous memories, I'll tell you that much. But the Don Granato era was a bit of everything, right? We had times where it was so much fun, and we had times where it was like, what the heck is going on? We're just never going to make the playoffs. I do think we have to give him his flowers for some of the good things he did here in Buffalo. You know, he helped us out of that post-Eichel-Kruger era. I mean, thank God he got us out of the Kruger era. Jack Eichel left, and Sam Reinhart left, and Ristolainen left, which might have been a positive, but ultimately, the team got gutted again, right? It had just built back up after tanking for Eichel and Reinhart, and those guys were in the middle of their primes, and they're gone. And Tage Thompson is all of a sudden this blossoming star, and he's now your replacement. It doesn't look as bad. We got to give him credit for that too, guys. The development of some of these players and helping them reach ceilings that, you know, we thought might be attainable, maybe if everything went right. And I still think Tage Thompson's got more to his game, but the fact that he's blossomed into a top 6 center this season, we can see that now that his hand has gotten a little bit healthier, that really it was that hand injury that really limited his shooting this year. But honestly, the development of Tage, Tuck, Peterka, Quinn, Cousins, Middlestat, Dahlin, UPL, I mean, the list goes on of all these guys that looked like, I mean, heck, there's so many discussions online and at the bar and with friends and family that, oh, this guy's got to go, or he sucks, or Tage Thompson's never going to be anything. He gets hurt every time he steps on the ice. Boom, put him at center, breakout. All of a sudden, he's a 40-goal scorer, guy that can do it all at 6'7". He dangles, he skates with the best of them, and he's got a wicked shot. And he's turning into somebody that's really, really frustrating to play against. For the opposition. Alex Tuck has turned into a first-line winger. He was not looked at that. He was a middle 6 player coming out of Vegas when we traded for him in the Eichel trade. So got to look at Tuck and give him the credit for that. Skinner, even, Skinner is what he is, right? And a lot of people have been frustrated with Skinner this year, but I think that's on the coaching again. I don't think Skinner fits with this style that Granato tried to implement this year, but, Skinner broke the up and down streak that he had. After the Kruger era, he finally started to look like the contract wasn't going to be an albatross. It looks bad. It's never going to look good. Let's get past that. But at least if we can get value out of Jeff Skinner and he can be a net positive to the team, I know his defense isn't good, but you're not paying Jeff Skinner to play defense. Yes, you want a little bit of both from the guy making that much, but again, it's not his fault he signed the contract. Thank Jason Bottrell for that parting gift before he was on his way out. But I still think that Skinner's got more in him, and last year's style easily suits him more. A guy that can still put in 30, 40 goals mostly at 5-on-5, which is where most of the game is played, so that is always valuable. JJ Peterka's breakout this year. Yes, and you might be able to say, oh, that was always coming. JJ Peterka was one of those guys that was looked at very highly in the draft. So, less so with Jack Quinn, but nonetheless, he was a top 10 pick, right? Both of those guys were looked at as potential stars, or not potential stars, but potential NHLers that could really contribute. And Granato has really helped those guys take a next step in their game. And I think that's the biggest thing that I can say about Don Granato is he's helped develop this team to a point where I feel the talent is playoff caliber. Are we going to make the cup? Are we going to go on a deep playoff run? No, we are not at the same level as the New Jersey Devils, and a little bit of that is on Kevin Adams. I know some of you are screaming in your car like Kevin Adams should have been fired too. I'm going to give the grace to Kevin Adams. I don't think he's done enough yet, but I also don't feel like he has done anything too tremendously bad that deserves to be fired. It's time to pull some triggers on the prospects, get some defensemen. He did with the Middlestat trade, so hopefully we can round out the blue line, build up some quality depth, and get some veteran leadership. But we'll talk about what this team needs in a future episode, but we're focusing on Don Granato. And really, he brought back optimism. The second half of last year was so electric. I'll never forget, going on vacation, on a wine tasting trip, and rushing back to turn on the Sabres game because we were playing the Islanders in that infamous, was it a kick, not a kick, miss by a point, lose the game 3-2 or something like that, right? I remember rushing back to the hotel to watch that, and I couldn't tell you another time that made me feel like that over the last now 13 years, right? So we got to give him credit for bringing back some optimism to the team too. Like I said, it's not all bad in the Granato era. Let's just get that out of our minds. There was good. Don't be clouded in the here and now. We got to think about the bigger picture at the same time. But let's talk about why now. Let's kind of dive back into that why now and here and now. So NHL record 13 playoff drought. I don't even need to say that. All of you listening to this podcast know the Buffalo Sabres have the longest playoff drought in NHL history, a league where routinely more than 50% of the teams made the playoffs, and now 50% do make the playoffs. It is incredible that the Sabres have somehow managed to muck up their rebuild so many times that they are now just record setters. They're the New York Jets of the NHL, and that's not company you want to keep. But also this team regressed in results, and I mentioned it earlier in the podcast, but the team performed above expected last year, and this year came crashing back down to earth. The team just didn't get the wins when they needed to. They played at a 73-point pace. 73-point pace. Let's just take a quick look in the NHL right now. Who is playing at a 73-point pace? It's the Montreal Canadiens. Ottawa's there. Columbus is slightly under that. You've got the Arizona Coyotes at 75, right? So you're talking about a bottom 5 pace here, guys. You're barely playing above San Jose, Chicago, Anaheim, and Columbus. Montreal is playing at a 75, 77-point pace, somewhere in that range, right? You can't do that for half the season when you are expected to be a playoff team. Like, you were expected to contend for the playoffs and finally break this drought. Now, there were some question marks, sure. Would the career shooting percentages carry over? They didn't. But at the same time, you still can't play at a 73-point pace. You've got Tage Thompson. I don't care if he goes from shooting 18% to shooting 13%. You still got to find the goals. JJ Peterka has elevated his game. Casey Middlestat, for the majority of the season, elevated his game. We just didn't see enough from the team this year early. And that's what I always say. You got to stack the wins early. Nobody is really out there giving 110, 120% for games in October, November, and early December. You get to the new year and all of a sudden teams are like, well, we're right on the cusp of the wild card. We really got to go at it, boys. And they get that little all-star break to recharge, and then they just go for it. But you got to start playing before January. Get the points while teams are figuring it out. Maybe a team that's expected to be a cup contender, a la Boston, has to figure some stuff out at the beginning of the season because there's a lot of shuffling of the lines and maybe a coaching change for another team that's a contender, right? And they're still trying to get the system under control and in their heads. You got to stack those wins then. You're not going to look at a Boston game now and say, oh, they're a little vulnerable, right? Boston's now clicking. Florida's clicking. Tampa is in a playoff spot. Yes, they just beat them last night, but still, you can't wait till these teams figure it out, and you got to be one of the teams that hit the ground running. And I know we've had our 10-game winning streaks, and oh my God, we're the top of the league, and it's November 4th, right? It's great. You got to be a little bit more consistent, too. Not only, I guess, playing at a 73-point pace, being able to string no more than 2 wins together at any point in the first half of the year. That is consistency, but that is consistently bad. Honestly, guys, this team they were never ready to play. They didn't come ready to play in the first half of the season, and they never figured it out. It never changed. Nothing about this team changed, except for UPL figuring it out after the new year. 2024 happened to be the year of Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, and thank God it did, because this team would be way worse off without Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, and Granato probably would have been fired in March, maybe February, if it wasn't for Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen turning into an absolute stud in the month of January. Yes, he's had some ups and downs closer to the end of the season, but the team hasn't really bailed him out too much either at any point, and he's bailed the team out more than they deserve. But how many first period leads did the Sabres give up? How many times did they give up the first goal? Well, let's take a look. The Sabres record when the opponent scores first, they were 14, 28, and 4. 14, 28, and 4. That is 46 games this season. They were trailing. The opponent scored first, and that's not just one. That could be multiple goals. I know there was plenty of times in November, December, and January when the Sabres were down 2-3-0 before the game really even got started. They answered back 4-1 at the end of 2. Oh boy, yeah, great. You really, really got them back in the game, guys. You got your legs go. It was just not enough. And when the team's not ready to play and they don't look like they have the answers within the first 5-10 minutes, and it's not just a one-off, you didn't just fly back from San Jose and then play the next day. No. This was a routine thing. You had back-to-back home games, and they still couldn't figure out how to start. So that really just all pointed to the coach, and that's all I needed to see. You guys heard me saying this back in December, but I was saying it in November and December. It was one of those, when these kinds of issues are recurring, when the team looks lost for the first 10 minutes of every game, that's a preparation issue. That is a motivation issue. That is not, we don't have Austin Matthews. We don't have like elite goal scorers. Well, we need a new third defenseman. Well, we need a new third line center and maybe a gritty win. No, that's not a personnel issue when every game you don't look ready to play. That goes back behind the bench. And that was really where I had fallen out of touch with Granato. Not only did the team play some tremendously boring hockey for 82 games this year, they also were never adjusting, never adapting. The power play, nobody freaking moves on the power play. By the way, Matt Ellis is still employed. Don't know if that's going to be a thing where his contract has expired, or maybe they're going to move him into a different role, maybe down to Rochester, maybe into a development role again, maybe into the front office. We'll wait and see on the whole Matt Ellis discussion. But this team's power play, everybody stood still. Everybody was like, this is my spot. I wait for a pass. If there's somebody in front of me, I pass it back to Don. It was so tremendously awful that like Bowen Byram comes in, starts moving, and runs into like 4 players, the other 4 players on the same shift, because he's like, wait, we don't move? I'm not supposed to be moving and using the extra man to our advantage and causing chaos and forcing the defenders to skate? I mean, the Sabres power play looks like it's on a whiteboard. If you put the magnets on a whiteboard and just set a 2-minute timer on your phone. The only thing you'd miss is them getting the puck cleared out of the zone. I mean, oh God, the power play was really, really infuriating this year. The fact that it took Bowen Byram coming in from a good system under Bednar in Colorado. I mean, you saw it. He came in, he was electric for the first few games because he wasn't playing Granato's system. He was playing with intuition and how he had been coached. And then all of a sudden, the Sabres like, no, you need to do this. He completely fell off the rails, and Bowen Byram now has the fan base torn. Now, we had this discussion a lot last year when we acquired Jordan Greenway. Jordan Greenway looked very good this year, and I think he was very solid for most of the season. But my point is, let's wait until we have a real head coach in there. Somebody with a system, somebody with a scheme that's not so just gouge your eyes out awful that even the most casual hockey fan can tell something's wrong. But this team was never ready. The power play was woeful, and nothing advanced. I mean, nothing got better. Okay, I shouldn't say that. The defensive XG improved. Now, we're going to get into my analytics, right, because it's me. Sorry, Sabres fans, you're stuck with me. Abby's studying for finals. The defensive XG did improve this season, so I will give them that, but it improved less than the offense regressed. Let me say that another way. The offense regressed more than the defense improved. And that's the kind of the thing with Don Granato that I've noticed over these last 2 years. There's no balance. He can't strike that balance. He can't thread that needle where it's, okay, last year was gangbusters. Everything is freaking happening. Offense and defense and all bunch of shots and goals and XG and oh my God, it's back and forth. It's electric. It was fun to watch. Was it sustainable? Are you going to win a cup that way? Probably not, but I'd much rather watch that than this season where he went full Kruger, by the way. A lot of this team this year reminded me of Ralph Kruger for the second half of the year. Cautionary tale. Don't know how much that is impacting Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Probably a little bit. I think his numbers are otherworldly. I think he saved like 20 goals above expected this season. So good on him, or for the second half of the season. Really crazy numbers, something like that. But it was either we play gangbusters, fire wagon hockey, or we just shut it down and hope to win a game 2-1 with a puck bouncing off of Tuck's hip, right? That is our game plan. You're not going to win a cup either one of those ways. And I'm not saying this team was expected to win the cup, but as far as, hey, what is the next step? I know they're just trying to grow and break the playoff drought and they're young and blah, 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 blah. The way I'm looking at it is, are we on a trajectory that is going to win the cup? And last season was like, okay, you got your offense, you got your breakouts. Everybody developed, everybody found out who they are and how to play the game. This season, let's play a bit more balanced and structured, and obviously the offense is going to regress a little bit, but still, it was a team that never wanted to get to the middle either. That's another issue I had. I got a bunch that it's just, I'm firing from the hip right now. So many things about this team this season that last season was kind of covered up because they were scoring, but they were doing some of these things, right? They were moving a bit more on the power play. They were actually getting to the middle of the ice. They still didn't generate enough high danger chances, in my opinion. I mean, they were one of the bottom teams in high danger. I shouldn't say they were one of the bottom teams. They were about bottom of the middle, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, if we divide it into thirds, they're in that middle 10, but they're more towards the bottom of that, which isn't good, but it's not awful. This season, they were in like the bottom 3, bottom 5 for the majority of the year. Last season, though, they were the number 1 medium danger chance team, right? They're taking shots from a little bit further out, right? Not right in on top of the crease, but more so the hash marks, maybe a little further out, and right there, the face-off dots and hash marks. So they were getting to the middle of the ice a little bit further out than you'd love to see. Vancouver fans know you guys go to crash the net, and you guys are getting all the high danger chances, which is why your shooting percentage is so high. But nonetheless, the Sabres would at least get to the middle of the ice last season from those medium danger chances. This season, that's evaporated. They don't go to the middle of the ice. They don't generate as many medium danger chances, and they've actually gotten worse with high danger chances. They've regressed offensively, and yes, some of that might be the shooting percentage, but most of that I think is on the way they're being taught to play and told to play this season, trying to be a little bit more solid and structured. And I really think, like I said, with Don Granato was one or the other. He couldn't find a way to get the team to play stronger defensively while also maintaining offense. Another thing that I'm just thinking of right now, the team felt slow this year, and they played slow, and the stats back that up. If you use the NHL's Edge website, it's really nice to see some things that maybe you don't have traditional advanced analytics for, like skating speed, right? How many bursts did you have, right? Last season, the Sabres were about the 50th, 60th percentile, so right about in the middle of the league as far as how quickly they play. This season, though, they've completely cratered. I'm just pulling it up real quick here. Yeah, so last season, the top skating speed and the bursts over 20 miles per hour, right? Those are those really high-flying teams will do that. They were about 56 percentile, right? So right there in the middle of the league, a little bit above average, right? And they felt fast last year. Guys, I implore you, Sabres fans, please turn on the playoffs this year. Watch some of the really, really good teams. Watch the Rangers. Watch Florida. Watch Boston. I know that's going to suck, but do it. Watch Vancouver. Watch Colorado. Just watch those teams that can just fly up and down the ice. They play with speed and they skate hard. And that was another thing, right? They felt slow, but they also didn't seem to give 100% effort. Maybe that was just trying to play more controlled and getting it confused. But anyway, the top skating speed and the speed bursts over 20 miles per hour were in the 50th percentile, 56th percentile. This season, the dots at the middle, it doesn't even want to tell me, because the dots at the middle, it says below 50th percentile. Based on this spider chart I'm looking at, yeah, it's in the middle. If you ever seen one of those, it's the Pentagon looking ones or something like that. Yeah, it's in the middle, which means they're at the very bottom of the league in that. So they've not skated at all. They had 700 fewer 18 to 20 mile per hour bursts, 300 fewer 20 to 22 mile per hour bursts, and then 22 plus mile. That's hard to get going that fast. But for example, let's take a look at a team this year that we know plays fast, right? Let's just go with, like I mentioned, the Colorado Avalanche, right? A really high-flying team that I think has been a model organization for these past couple of years. Their speed bursts over 20 miles per hour is in the 99th percentile, and their top skating speed's at the 87th percentile. They had 1,200 more 18 to 20 mile per hour bursts and 1,400 more bursts over, but between 20 and 22. So really, this is just kind of how many times does this guy hit those speeds, which is indicative of you playing fast. Their max skating speed, by the way, was also a full mile per hour faster than the Sabres. Now that's McKinnon, right? But the Sabres have fast guys as well. But honestly, they didn't really skate fast enough. There was no urgency to the game this season, right? And we saw that last year that they were a bit faster, right? And the stats back that up. All of this is to say that they just didn't play quickly enough. There wasn't enough sharpness in the passing. There wasn't enough high-flying, high-speed play to their game, to that edge, right? And we look at a team like Colorado, and you're like, okay, well, maybe if they're just out of control, flying super fast up and down the ice, they'll just be a bad defensive team. I don't know about you guys, but I'd much rather be the Colorado Avalanche and watch a team like that every night than watch a team like the Sabres. The Colorado Avalanche also did end up finishing with a couple more goals against per game at 3.1 to the Sabres 2.96. But they scored 3.67 to the Sabres 2.98, right? So really, it's a team that just was flying up and down the ice and was exciting to watch. Now we can take a look at the Florida Panthers, another team that I have really bigged up here and told you guys to watch. As far as the skating is concerned, they're right in that 50th percentile too. The Sabres this season are at the very bottom, right? And the Panthers, 500 more in the 18 to 20, and then another 250 more in the 20 to 22. So my point, guys, don't get caught up too much in those numbers. Just know that these teams are all, like every team that we watch that is going to be playing late April into May, right? They're going to be playing at a much faster pace than the Buffalo Sabres did. And it's part of what made this season so brutal, right? Last season it was like, okay, we lost the game, but it was 4-6, and that was fun. And okay, we lost, but it was 3-5, right? Or we lost in overtime and it was 6-5, right? That was fun. Now, it did spell concern for the goaltending, but we at least had fun. It kind of all covered up the fact that the team was not great last season either. This season it got worse, right? So that's my final bullet point on why is Granato gone. I mean, Sabres fans are like, just yes, agree with everything here. But last year, our expected goals percentage was 21st, right? So out of the amount of expected goals generated in a game, the Sabres generated about 48.9%. This season, we dropped to 25th. It still could change a little bit, right? Not everybody's finished the season. The Sabres season is done, but we dropped from 21st to 25th, so a couple spots lower in the expected goals percentage, and it's now 47.4. So we went from 48.9 to 47.4. So that's 1% more expected goals against than for this season, even though the defense did improve. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying. Granato got us here to a point where I think there is talent. I think there is good, really, really good talent. I think there's talent capable of winning a playoff series or two on this team, with, Tage Thompson and JJ Peterka and Alex Tuck and Dahlin and Byram and Power and Cousins and Benson and Quinn's back. And, all of those guys, they take another step. They add some structure to their game that allows them to play both offense and defense. And I really do think that this team has hit its peak with Granato, and I think that's ultimately why now. He's not the guy I think that it's going to take us any further, and he's not going to get a chance to. So that's actually nice to see that Kevin Adams is being a little ruthless. I appreciate it. Kevin Adams, a guy that many people are also wanting out, has shown now that he is going to do what it takes to get this team over the hump, and it's step one: fire the coach. I mean, I would have liked to see it a lot sooner, but hey, he did it, right? And I'm not going to be a Kevin Adams apologist here, but I'm just going to look at the good and the bad and say that most of what he's done with the roster has been very good. This is now, like I said, a roster that a lot of us believe should be a playoff contender. Nobody's complaining about the roster not having enough top-end talent. You're now talking, we need bottom sixers. We need third pairing defensemen. We need a backup goalie. Those are nice problems to have, by the way. It's much better than a team saying, oh, well, we got a lot of depth, but there's really nobody come clutch time, right? We don't have those stars. We don't have those guys to take us across the line. We don't have point per game players. We have the luxury of having Tage and Tuck, and now Peterka has blossomed into a top six bona fide winger. He looks amazing, by the way. I know he's one of my favorite players, and some of you guys might be rolling your eyes, but still, he's developed into that, and I don't think it's a roster issue yet. We'll see. Kevin Adams has to do a coaching search. He's got to add more to this bottom end of this roster, right? I'll say it blatantly that I think keeping Oposo past his expiration date just because he was a veteran and the captain was a poor decision on his part. Keeping Gergensen's around just because I think was also a poor decision on his part. I think he needs to do more. Getting some depth there. Maybe fourth line is tough. Maybe upgrade for the third line for sure. And then definitely some blue liners, not Jacob Bryson, who has played well this season. Cal Clegg can't be stepping in. Yoki Haru has shown us that while there is some good in him, there's more bad when he's on the ice. Connor Clifton, jury's out there. Again, feel like coming from a structured system in Boston like he played, coming to Buffalo under Granato. We can see Granato takes players that were good elsewhere and turns them into bad players. Well, maybe not necessarily the case. Jordan Greenway probably rebutes that take. But my point is, we'll see. I think Clifton had really good analytics on the third pairing. That's another gripe I had with Granato. He just kind of seemed to roll the lines. There never seemed to be any kind of matching. He never tried to give certain players sheltered minutes and dominate these minutes. And well, these guys can handle the tough minutes, so we'll give them a little tough. It just kind of seemed to be like, okay, we're in the offensive zone, go Tage. Okay, we're in the defensive zone, come back, Tage. Right? It just kind of didn't feel like he was doing very well matching the quality of competition to what a player can handle. And I feel like that's why we need an experienced NHL head coach that can do it. So let's talk about some potential candidates. There's going to be a lot of names, a lot of names that are thrown around over the next couple weeks. I don't think we're going to see anything until the Amherst are done. Well, I shouldn't say that. Seth Appert is definitely going to be a candidate. He's somebody we're all familiar with, Rochester Americans head coach. He's been very, very good for Rochester. How much of that is because Kevin Adams is signing a lot of AHLers to make Rochester a very good place to play, and in surrounding the young players like Roseanne, Kulik, those guys with really good talent. Levi's there, and we know that he's got NHL experience. He looked really good when he went there. But Seth Appert here, let's take a look at his record as the Rochester Americans head coach. He's had in 2020, 2021, when the organization was pretty barren, 431 points percentage. Then in 2021, 2022, which is the real first year of Kevin Adams, he had a 55% points percentage. Last season, he had a 56% points percentage. This season, he's got a 60% points percentage. Now, he hasn't gotten them over the hump in the playoffs, right? They missed the playoffs his first year. They lost in the second round his second year, and the third round last year, which is, I believe, the conference finals. But we'll see what he does this year. He's certainly going to be a candidate. I'm prepared for that to be the move that the Sabres make. I don't want that to be the move. You guys know that I want an experienced head coach with playoff experience. I want that. I want somebody who's been behind the bench at the NHL level, knows how to deal with NHL players and NHL stars. You know, nobody really knows how to shut down McDavid, but it's a lot different when that's the kind of guy you're going up against every night versus those guys down in Rochester and whatnot. So it's a big jump. So you got to know how to manage the game that way. But Jeff Marek did drop this a few days ago I wonder if the Sabres do move on if they look at Seth Appert. A guy like that doesn't just do that because he just thought it would be a neat idea, or because he's just like, hey, well, you know, what's up? Let's just figure it out. No, Jeff Marek knows his stuff. He's on Sportsnet. He's got the Jeff Marek Show. I think he's a guy that doesn't just say stuff just to say it, right? And that worries me. I think Seth Appert is definitely going to be a leading candidate. I don't want him to get the job. No offense to Seth. And you know what? If he does, so be it. I'll root for him. I'll cheer for him. I don't want to be right about saying I don't think he's the guy, but I don't think he's the guy that we need at this stage. What I think we need at this stage is a guy just to get us to the playoffs. Listen, I'm fine with anybody getting us to the playoffs for 3 straight years and we flame out in the first or second round. That's fine. I'll take that, right? I'm not going to complain about a playoff appearance after 13 freaking seasons without it. I'll take the Maple Leafs. I'll take 5 years of first round exits. I'll take it. Just give me the playoffs. We'll find somebody else after that. We'll find a head coach to get us over the hump. But right now, let's just make the darn thing. So anyway, there's plenty of head coaches of names that are going to be circling out there. So I tried to do my due diligence and put together a list with a brief bullet point or two about each guy. So one of the first names I saw pop up was actually David Carl. He is Denver University's head coach. University of Denver? Anyway, he's a college coach. He's taken Denver to 2 national titles in the last 3 years. 3 years ago, there was this season, last season, the year before last. They knocked off Michigan in the semifinals in the Frozen Four. That team had Luke Hughes, Power, Beniers, Portillo, a lot of familiar names for all of us. So he took his Denver University squad, built up that program, and now they've won 2 of the last 3 national titles. So a guy that has won in pressure situations, but I believe he's 34, never coached in the NHL. I like the idea. It just doesn't get me as excited as... You know, listen, a retread. At this point, we need a fresh face. We need somebody with experience. So I'm not going to be upset about David Carl. I think he's going to be getting a lot of interviews this summer with so much coaching change. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be hotly tipped to get an NHL coaching position. Maybe he'll coach a team, you know, that's on the rise a little bit younger rather than a team expected to make the playoffs. Now, I guess you could say we are on the rise and, you know, a bit younger. We are the second youngest team in the NHL, I believe, or the youngest, second fewest experience. Anyway, I think he's going to be a guy that you might see some names throw him out there, right? The big wigs, the Spittin' Chicklets, the guys on Bleacher Report, right? You're going to see that be a name that's thrown out there a bunch. There's also Craig Berube, former St. Louis Blues head coach, former Philadelphia head coach. His time in St. Louis, over the 6 years he was there, they had a 59.7% points percentage. Obviously, the first year he was there, he took over the team, the Jordan Bennington run. They won the Stanley Cup after they got O'Reilly, right? We saw that. We were talking about a first overall pick for the O'Reilly trade. Then they ended up turning it around from January on to make the playoffs. His second season, they finished with a 66.2% points percentage, did win one playoff series, were eliminated. Actually, I don't think they did. I don't know how he went 2-7 in the postseason, but he did. I don't know how that works. Anyway, they were a really good team. 94 points in 71 games there. Was that part of the COVID lockout season? I'm not sure exactly what that was. But then there is the COVID season here with 56 games. They had 56% points percentage. Did get swept in the first round of the playoffs there. Then in 2021-2022, he finished with 109 points, a 66.5% points percentage. And then I really feel like the team fell off. It wasn't, I don't put it on Berube. I think he got the raw end of the deal here, raw end of the stick. I think it was a roster that was aging. They let Pietrangelo go, and they didn't really replace him, right? So I think the roster was on its way down. They needed a rebuild and a refresh. He did get that team to a 49.4% points percentage, so that's about what we would have had with Granato. And then he was finally fired just 28 games into this season after the team started 13-14-1. St. Louis, though, after he was relieved of his duties, went 30-19-4 under Drew Bannister. So take that for what you will. Sometimes coaches just hit their shelf life with a team. It's not necessarily an indictment on their skill, but sometimes, they just need a fresh voice and a fresh face after the good times have worn off. So definitely an option there. Next, we've got Lindy. You guys know Lindy Ruff, Sabres fans, longtime coach, recently of the New Jersey Devils. Listen, I love Lindy. I just think it needs to be somebody who's never been in this organization before. We need new, fresh ideas. I think we need somebody who can come in and take a look at the organization and just give us the cold hard truth about the roster and about certain players, right? Guys that have allegiance to the Sabres, I get it, right? Everybody's going to call in the WGR and say, give me Lindy, give me Pekka, give me, Jay McKee, give me any of those guys, right? But I really do think the voice needs to come from the outside, somebody that's been there and done that. Now, Lindy does check the boxes of experienced, has been in the playoffs multiple times with pretty much everywhere he's coached. He's made the playoffs, and that is right. He made it with the Sabres, obviously. The Dallas Stars, they played 19 games, and then with the New Jersey Devils, they did play 12 games. They made it last season. This past season was not good for them, but I don't blame Lindy exactly for this past season. Again, I blame the GM who didn't put a roster in place. They didn't get him a freaking goalie, first of all, and I think they miscalculated letting some of their defenders go and not replacing them with the appropriate players. Like, is it Siegenthaler? I think it might be Siegenthaler. They let go. No. He went to the Blue Jackets. Oh, if Abby was here, Abby would pull it out. I know he would. I'm struggling right now to pull it out, but Severson, yeah. He did play very easy minutes, but he absolutely dominated in those minutes that he played. I mean, he was phenomenal in those light minutes, and that's what I mean, that matching up, right? Severson is a guy that dominates those lighter minutes, so put him on the ice for those light minutes. Don't give him tough competition. Just because a guy's playing well against light competition doesn't mean he can necessarily make the switch to playing against tougher competition. And if you've got a guy that's going to be an elite defender against light competition, let him cream those minutes and find somebody to replace, to play the tougher minutes, right? You just got to find that balance. I think that's a big job of the head coach, is to figure that out, working with the GM. Like I said, I'm not going to talk too much about Kevin Adams today on the podcast. We've got all summer to talk about his moves. Next is Rod Brind'Amour. This is a name that I've heard thrown out. I really doubt it, but he still hasn't signed an extension with Carolina. I bet you Carolina's waiting to see how the playoffs goes, right? If they flame out and lose in the first round of the Islanders, I think he's going to be gone. He would be a name I'd be really interested in. I think his team's generate a lot of low danger chances, but they're still a very strong team, right? They control the shot attempts. They do control games very, very well. I would really like Rod Brind'Amour. He does have that connections with Kevin Adams. They played together there in Carolina, so maybe that's a thread to tug on. I don't think Brind'Amour even if he doesn't get his contract extended, I don't think he's looking at the Sabres as the beautiful next job for him, because I think with his pedigree, he's going to be looking at a more polished team, a little bit more veteran of a team, and just a team that is less of a project. Now, I don't think the Sabres are as big of a project as you might think, but I definitely think there will be an adjustment period, guys. So for whatever new head coach it is, don't jump down their throats in October and November. If it was still Donnie, I'd allow it. Give him a little bit of time. I know it's weird to say, but if we get off to a hot start, that's a very good sign. Next is Gerard Gallant, former Vegas and former New York Rangers head coach. He's produced success everywhere he goes, but fans and players, well, I guess New York fans and New York players are not as, they don't really sing his praises all that much. And apparently, according to some reports from ESPN, an NHL source suggested that feedback from the players' exit interviews also played a big part in his firing from the New York Rangers. So take that for what you will. We've got a lot of young players on the team we have. How does he work with youngsters? How is he going to do, with power specifically is somebody that I'm thinking about, right? Or even Bowen Byram. Does his style and coaching system and scheme, does it get the most out of those kinds of players? I think he could probably do it, but we'll see. And then finally, the last name I threw on here, just somebody that got recently fired as well, is Todd McClellan, former San Jose, Edmonton, and LA Kings head coach. His Edmonton time is a little bit weird, really bad, and then really good, and then not great again. San Jose was probably where he got all of his praise, right? And then in LA, we know that team was, well, the roster wasn't all that great, but he did get it to play very, very well. So I think his departure has also helped LA this season. So that's something to also keep in mind there. But those are the coaching candidates, guys, that I've just listed. There's going to be plenty more. There's a whole Bleacher Report article. I've been sent this like twice already about the 7 up-and-comers, and it's like, I think those guys, I hope they're all great. I hope they all do fantastic unless they're in the Atlantic Division. But I want somebody who's been there and done that, right? Even somebody boring, it's this guy again, right? Obviously, I don't want Babcock. I don't want Quenneville. I don't want those guys. I'm talking about just, an Alain Vigneault, right? If you bring him in, nobody's jumping up and down dancing, but just make the playoffs. Put the team in a position where we can clearly identify that it's the players, not the coach, right? We need to add more players. This player needs to play better. Skinner needs to back check, right? Things like that. Listen, my very small criteria is a coach with experience and the NHL level that has coached 2 playoff series. That is what I want to see. I'd prefer him to have a very fun style of hockey. Somebody who's likes to lean more towards offense than defense, because I think that's where the roster is constructed, right? We're not constructed with a bunch of big-bodied guys that drive and crash the net and look for tips and are diving in front of shots, right? Not saying that our guys don't do that or aren't capable of it, but I think the team is really built around offense and speed and the ability to just play the new way the NHL plays, right? Like I mentioned Colorado earlier. Their goals against per game, it's right about the middle of the league at 3.1. I'm not dying for the team to move down to the Carolina Hurricanes, Florida Panthers, Jets territory of 2.5 against per game. I'm okay with 3 against per game, but as long as the offense is there in the top 10 again, right? 3.25 again, 4 per game would be fantastic. The Sabres dropped to 2.98, right? So sub 3. I'm hoping to see, a quarter goal more per game, 3.254 and 3.0 something against, I think is a really, really healthy balance here. For example, 3.05 is ranked 18th, worst in the NHL. I guess that would be, it's the 15th best in the NHL. 3.1 goals against per game is league average. I would absolutely take that. Are you kidding me? I think 3.1 against per game is somewhere similar to where we were sitting last season. Let me double check that for you guys. I want to get you the right numbers here. The Sabres last season, they allowed 3.62, right? So I guess I am allowing for half a goal fewer against per game, but I'm also not asking for for the same offense, right? 3.57 is absolutely wild. I don't think I want to be that team that is just fire wagon hockey, but I still want to lean more towards offense. Colorado, 3.67, sure. Vancouver, good example here. 3.4 goals for, 2.7 against, right? Not the best, but hell, I'll even take Tampa at 3.48 for, 3.25 against. But, take a look at the Florida Panthers. Oh my God, they're crazy. I'm trying to find like a good comp for us right now. Struggling a little bit to find a solid comp. The New York Rangers at 3.4 goals for and 2.75 against. That's really good. So you can see the makings of a good team is the goals for and goals against, obviously, right? That's how we win the games, is score more than your opponent. But in my opinion, I think this team does need to find a coach who leans more towards offense, even if the defense isn't going to be quite as good, quote unquote, as it was this year, right? It was so good. We allowed the 11th fewest goals against per game, and that's fine. But we need to find a way to do that while also scoring some offense. So that is my criteria. That is my Granato breakdown. We will talk about how the season went for both Vancouver and Buffalo. The regular season is just about over. Vancouver, congratulations on making the playoffs. Sorry that you guys aren't going to win the President's Trophy. That is the New York Rangers this year, but you guys still are going to be the second best team in the Western Conference, winning your division. Most likely, it'd be impressive if you guys slipped up and lost to Edmonton, but I'm glad to see Demko is going to be back. Very excited about that. So that is all the time I have for this one, guys. Make sure you leave your thoughts at us on Twitter, at Expansion Bros Pod. As well as leaving a comment down in the comment section on YouTube. Make sure to share it with your friends. Leave us a 5-star rating and a like if you want. We appreciate it very much. Abby will be back very shortly, guys. I promise. The next time you hear from us, he will be here. But I had to get this one out in an emergency podcast because Don Granato has been relieved of his duties, and we have a very fun summer ahead of us. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I will talk to you guys in the next one.